Hey, you summoned a lesser maker. I just got home from work, and today we're going to start a new project. It's one of my favorite things to do, making a Mordheim board. I'm going to put all four of these boards together, and then I'll break down how you can make one for yourself. We're going to finally start finishing the last piece of the puzzle. On a lot of these overhead shots, you're going to see hanging signs, windows. All these STLs are completely free on Patreon. A lot of these builds have free templates. Almost every single one has a build video associated with it. And you can find all those in the Summon Mordheim playlist. Those videos go all the way back to the very beginning where I started my first Mordheim board. We got to put these ones away, and these boards have something really cool. I magnet my boards to the wall. So this is the main point for me, incorporating all these buildings onto the board directly. I don't have a ton of space for terrain, and I've been making terrain every week for 2 years now. Because I'm consolidating it all on one board, I'm not drowning in it. Also, these look really cool on the wall. It's an art piece, and I really take pride in looking at it, and it's a fun way to do it. I've only had one board fall, and it was this one. The last time I renovated it, I made it too heavy for the magnet. So now I have two magnets on here, as you might have seen. There's not going to be a risk of it falling off. Just as an insurance, I might do it on the other two, and the fourth one. But as of now, I'm going to just leave them the way they are because it isn't broke. So I don't really need to fix it. Okay, so before we put this board away, we got to mark our streets. Just grab a Sharpie and mark where these roads go. All right, so spinning around the boards in opposite directions is the easiest way to make sure all sides match. Now, nothing will ever be exactly perfect. This is Mordheim after all, so if it's off kilter a bit, I feel like you've done it correctly. The city has been hit by a meteor, so be nice to yourself. It doesn't need to be precise. We have two road entrances here and then two road entrances here. We just got to bridge the gap in between the rest of them. And you've seen some examples in the previous boards. For this one, I want it to be really dense, a lot of city and not so many roads. So I think it would be cool to kind of bridge the gap here and then just do a little bridge here of roads. So something like this. So this will work for our board layout. We have a lot of space to work with. We're going to be making road like pavers. And this is what our foundation for our road is going to look like. The easiest way for me to do that is with a paint handle that I crimped into a square. And you just punch each and every single one of these. It's time consuming, but it looks freaking fantastic. So I didn't make up this punch tool. I picked this up from Devs and Dice. He's a legend over there on his Mordheim channel. It really can't be beat. When it becomes kind of difficult to punch these over and over and over again, I always kind of sandpaper the edge of this and it resharpens it a little bit. I don't go too aggressive because it's a really soft metal. And usually after I sand off a little bit, it punches pretty sharply again. We don't have that much to punch on this side. So I think it's about time that we get started. So punching each one of these little pavers takes a while. And while you're doing it, you're going to find that you're going to have to change the angle of the tool to make sure that you're filling the gaps you're leaving behind. I try to get them as close as possible with one grout line in between each brick. It takes some practice, and my first board is a little janky, but it still does end up looking good because the consistent texture will really kind of steal the show, and any mistakes you make while you're punching these, I think makes it a little bit more unique, and it paints up pretty good. While you're punching these, sometimes on some edge of the tool, when I'm doing it, the surface tension breaks the tile up a bit, like a crack through the middle. And I really like when that happens because it kind of makes it like look a little bit more authentic. While I'm doing this, I know that it takes a while, but I'm getting a tactile feel for how much space this board is giving me, and having that much familiarity with something while I go to work and think about a board and kind of mull over some ideas on how I want this thing to look is something that I wouldn't trade. It's a really good experience. I have some rough ideas. I asked my patrons also what they wanted to see incorporated. I have a lot of this really cheap styrofoam that I'm going to use to kind of bulk out this base structure, and then we'll kind of build on top of it. As always, we're going to be using Great Stuff foam adhesive, and this is like gap filler, and this is the best way to stick foam to foam. I've often noticed that cities don't get planned out very well. So if you organize your city and like everything's equidistant in miniature scale, it's going to be too perfect. So I always tend to kind of improvise it and let kind of the material dictate things. I'm using this cheap packing foam to block out basic shapes. The thin packing foam you're seeing right now is not all the packing foam here is too fragile to be played on. So I either need to replace it with XPS foam or skin it with either foam core or the XPS foam. Even with a Mod Podge coating, this foam is too fragile for a long-term bond, especially if I'm going to be gluing buildings on top of this thing and expecting it to hang sideways for a long period of time. So after I got all the basic shapes put in and roughed out, I glued everything together with this Great Stuff gap filler, and this is that foam adhesive I mentioned earlier. When I glued it down, I pushed it completely flat against the board and just wiped away all the excess. Because I pushed all the air out, all that glue was doing was adhering the foam to the board. So just monitor it and make sure that it's not expanding ridiculously or whatever. But anything at this point is fixable. At this point, I'm skinning the cheap foam with foam core and I'm cutting strips out that are taller than the walls and just applying a texture roller over them, gluing them onto the side and then trimming off the excess. A lot of this area is going to be covered with other things, and we're going to be putting buildings around this as well. So I don't want to put a bunch of effort into walls that are going to be completely covered. I'm just making sure that I'm not putting myself in a corner at this point, leaving a lot of open-ended questions that I can answer later with structures and architecture is going to be really helpful. I made a bunch of these buttresses to put on the upper levels because we're going to have some overhangs coming off of these. What this is going to do is going to add a lot more square footage to this board. Well, probably more like square inches, but I think you're getting the idea. We're going to be adding a lot more playable area with bridges and overhangs, and that's including with the buildings we're going to be adding on top of this. It's just going to make the board feel so much bigger the more options you're going to be giving to the players. I glued on an extra offcut to this corner here just to kind of demonstrate to you how strong this foam adhesive is, because it fills in all the gaps and it's the adhesive. That added surface area just makes the bond super strong, and it allows you, it's just a lot more forgiving than hot glue and other things would be, especially covering such a wide area. I'm texturing all this surface area with rocks, and I'm beveling the edges and the seams between the foam pieces that I kind of cobbled together. A friend of mine on Instagram named Bash and Egg wanted to make a campaign together. Last year I did this to help encourage you guys to go out and play Mordheim together. We put together this awesome little campaign. It's a 3-scenario play session called Whispers of the Weirdsmith. And Bash and Egg just killed the artwork on this thing. It looks really, really cool. Honestly, it was just really fun to kind of put this together with a friend, and I hope you guys enjoy this. It's free on my Patreon. There's no subscriptions. It's just something I wanted to give away to you guys. And so did Bash and Egg. So thanks again for doing all the artwork for this. It was amazing. I encourage you to go out and play. Mordheim's free, and it's a really fun game. A couple episodes ago, I tried out this foam safe primer, and this time I set this aside because honestly, it melted the foam super bad. And I was really surprised because usually I use stuff like this Krylon, and I don't get any foam melt at all. So I assumed wrongly that foam safe primer would be better. This is the same styrofoam I used in that project. I used this Krylon spray paint, and I had absolutely no melting, and I was basically spraying it on point blank just to kind of test it out. If you see this, don't ever buy it. It's just garbage. While I'm giving the board a quick dry brush to show off the textures, I'm going to thank my patrons. Thank you guys so much for making these videos possible. Doing a build every week adds up, so your support really does help a lot. If you'd like to support the channel, consider leaving a comment, a like, and go check out the free stuff on Patreon. If you find value in that stuff, or if you like the videos and would like to see more, it's only $2 a month, and it goes a long way to support the channel. On the back center of the board where it's heaviest, I try to find the center and glue in the magnet mount. Then I screw it in with a drywall screw and then reinforce that by surrounding it by hot glue as well. With a metal drywall anchor, I take the other magnet and I screw that into the wall. The drywall anchor is just a way to avoid having to find a stud. And then after that is screwed in, it just works like magic. You can pull it off whenever you want to play with it, and it's easily accessible. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to watch the rest of this project as it unfolds. I look forward to building this with you. Make sure you leave a comment to suggest what else could be on the board. I look forward to seeing some of your feedback. If you have any questions about this process, I answer every comment. All right, have a good one.